Здравствуйте, дамы и господа. Сегодня в «Зеленой» гостиной очень известный хореограф Christian Шпук. Он приехал в Большой театр сейчас, чтобы ставить мировую премьеру балет «Орландо» на нашей новой сцене. И мы рады, что смог сегодня быть с нами в «Зеленой» гостиной. I'm saying that we are very pleased to welcome you in our green room on the occasion that you are staging a world premiere of «Орландо» on our new stage.
Thank you.
Christian, I understood that your path to the ballet is quite unusual, as it took you such a long time to come to this art, and you were only like 21 when you started to do it professionally, which I found is absolutely incredible. And I wonder why it took you so long.
It took me a long time as a young boy, 16, 17, to understand myself that I actually felt a passion for dance. And when I explained my parents that I would like to do this professional, the reaction was not very positive in the beginning. Because in Europe, in those days in Germany, the profession of a classical ballet dancer doesn't have a very high knowledge in society. It's more a lower artist position. It's not as prominent or famous like in Russia, where a ballet dancer really has a big cultural position. And my parents said, like, you have to finish your school, then you have to go to army or do civil service instead, and then you can do with your life what you want. And then I knew that I would be like 21, but somehow the urge inside of me was so strong that I decided to go to professional ballet school.
But before you did it, you had some dance lessons, right?
I had some dance lessons in private schools, yeah.
And you didn't have to go through some rebel, because once you decided at 21, you had already accomplished whatever they wanted you to do.
No, it was very difficult. I think I was lucky that the school, the famous John Cranko school in Stuttgart, took me because they were missing boys. And I think they were happy to find another boy. I had no pre-education. I was together with students they were like 16 years old. I was 21. It felt very awkward for a very long time, and it was not a happy time. I needed a lot of discipline. I needed a lot of courage by my friends to go through this time. It was not easy.
So it was tough for you to learn it all.
Yes.
And then at a certain moment you realize that dancing is fine, but choreographing is more interesting.
Well, originally I wanted to become an actor. And then somehow dance found me, and I was really excited about it. But I was always interested to create on stage, to put pictures on stage, to bring the stage alive somehow with music. This was always something in my mind. And somehow the language of dance was the most appealing to me, because I feel that this is a language which is universal, everybody can understand it. And I find that the transport of emotions and character is more direct than going through the spoken word, for example, like actor.
There is this phenomenon of Stuttgart, of course, where so many choreographers were breeded, and you came after Cranko time, but still were breeded in Stuttgart in a way. What the school did for you? Why it is like this? Why people with creative mind can come out of this experience?
It's very difficult to answer this. I think it's a tradition which goes all the way back to Novea, and I think also John Cranko always supported choreographers. One of the first famous ones were, of course, Jiří Kylián, John Neumeier, William Forsythe. This was the famous generation John Cranko supported. And all the directors afterwards, like Marcia Heide and also Reed Anderson, they always supported choreographer. They were always looking for choreographer. So create new choreographers is very big in Stuttgart. And this company takes more energy than other companies to find new choreographers.
And so when you start to create, they give you a chance to do it on their ground.
Yes, you have the possibility. It's called Novea. It's something like a program for young choreographers. That means you have a small stage, you can make a small piece, about 5 to 10 minutes. And if the director likes the production, you maybe get a second chance. And if you're lucky, they take this piece in the repertoire. And that was my case. Reed Anderson saw my first pas de deux. He put it in the repertoire. And from that day, he asked me every season to make a new creation.
And eventually you were invited to biggest company in Switzerland to run the Zürich Ballet.
Yeah.
Did it come as a surprise to you? Were you happy? Because it's a big responsibility, not just to be a creative author who comes and go, but to be responsible for the company.
Yeah. Well, I've been the resident choreographer and house choreographer of Stuttgart Ballet, and I was lucky that I could create everywhere in the world. I've been invited to many companies, and it caught me by surprise. I met the designated intendant, Andreas Homoki of the Opera House Zürich, and in those days I just created 2 operas, so I thought he wanted to meet me and ask me for an opera creation. But instead he asked me to run the company of Ballet Zürich, so I was a little bit surprised. But of course, I felt also very honored, and it was a dream of mine to have my own company because it's a different way of working than being a guest somewhere. And then after some sleepless nights and careful thinking, I decided to take this opportunity, and since then, now it's my 9th season with the Ballet Zürich in Switzerland.
And did you brought some dancers only for Romeo and Juliet, like Catherine Wunsch? Or you just brought them with you forever in the company?
I brought them forever with me in the company. I kept quite a lot of dancers from the previous director, and I brought some dancers from Stuttgart I worked a lot with. One of them is Katja Wünsche, for example, and William Moore, our leading dancers, and they are still in the company today. I'm a very loyal person. If I feel that I'm interested in an artist, it's not always for only one production. I always like to have a long relationship with artists.
I understood you have some special approach to your company. Like you said that this leadership and hard leadership is something which should stay in the past. While in the Russia, we're very much trapped by this idea that it should be a very strong leadership and also very tough education in the ballet field. So if your leadership is not so strong, how company is functioning?
Well, the Ballet Zürich company luckily is functioning very well. Just last season, we've been voted Company of the Year. We made the Production of the Year. We can tour everywhere in the world before this terrible pandemic started. I was always surprised, even my time in Stuttgart and working with other companies, that most directors have a very, very hard leadership. They're not looking for a certain communication with the artists. They basically tell them what to do. And for my taste, this was always very one-sided, this communication. Now, you cannot compare Ballet Zürich and Bolshoi. We have like 50 dancers. I think the Bolshoi has over 200 dancers. Yeah, this is very different. But I'm also a choreographer. That means I'm an artist who's very close to the dancers. I need the understanding between us. So I have 2 jobs at Ballet Zürich. I'm a director, and sometimes I also have to be very tough and very hard with decisions. But I'm trying to make sure that the dancers or the members of the company understand my decision. I always explain my decisions, and I always go in a discussion before about those decisions. Because otherwise, you very easily get a field and atmosphere of fear. And I think, and I believe in it, that fear is the enemy of art. I don't believe that fear can create anything productive. I'm also looking in my company a lot for communication. We have a lot of company meetings. I'm a lot in the studio, especially when we have guests, other choreographers are coming. I'm always in the studio, supporting the choreographer, supporting the dancers. Most directors are close to the company to control. They want to see if everything is right. Because we directors are always under pressure, I can understand. To invite a choreographer to make a full-length production is for a director a lot of pressure. Is the result good enough? Is it good enough for the company? Will it sell? There's a lot of money involved. I can totally understand. But I believe to be there and to observe this process and to be in communication with everyone, you can in the end reach more and support more than just being a controller and making very, very hard decisions in the last moments. And that's the way I run my company. It's a lot of communication, a lot of talking, a lot of exchanging, and also a lot of listening what the dancers actually have to say and how they feel. But on the other side, I also stay completely away from them. I never meet them private for coffee. I never go for dinner with them. This has to be absolutely separated because then you can meet in a neutral field. The moment you have private things involved, things can get very, very complicated.
Indeed. But do you have also a group of professors who are sort of putting forward your ideas? Who are the people who work with them on daily level, like mastering parts?
I have 3 ballet masters, of course. They give classes there, and they are my assistants. And I meet them twice a week. We have meetings and discuss the situation. We discuss casting. When we see one dancer has a problem, we discuss it. We go into talks, how we can help and solve situations. So those 3 assistants are very, very close to me. And they're very different characters. And some of them in the beginning, they came from my previous director. And I realized that they always said yes to me. They always followed my decisions until I realized this is a big mistake. Because the people who are close to the director, the ballet masters who know what's going on in the studio, they have to tell me what is wrong. So they basically should feel free to tell me, Christian, I think your decisions at the moment could be difficult. Or shall we rethink this decision, or what's going on in your mind? So I try to educate them to have their own voices in order to find freedom of taking the right decisions. And that was a very, very long process. Because in a lot of companies, I see that also ballet masters are run by fear. They want to do everything right for the director, which is not supportive for a company, I believe.
And you're like 50 people, right, in the company? Yeah. And when you do an audition, what are the qualities you are looking?
Well, first of all, when I do audition, I always look at the dancers with my team. I never take a decision by myself. Some of the ballet masters see much earlier technical qualities. They see much earlier quality, how a dancer can move. I look more for personalities because when you create for a dancer, you need to have a connecting. And this connecting sometimes goes beyond the technical abilities. But of course, they all need to have a very, very high level of technique because we're looking for the best of the dancers. And which is very relevant in a small company like in Ballet Zürich, if you have 50 dancers, you have to find a dancer who is fitting in the group, who is fitting in the group spirit, who is able to take a certain responsibility within this group. In a company like the Bolshoi, I'm sure you have to look for completely different qualities than in a smaller company. So it's quite a long process until I say yes to a new dancer.
And do you feel some rivalry inside the company when you do casting list? Because it's so difficult. Who are dancing this role? Everyone wants to be Juliet, let's say, and then you bring Katya Wunsch and she does it. So how the rest of the company? Because I saw the rest of the company took it sort of normal. Means probably you talk to them or you explain, or I don't know how, because I think always rivalry exists.
We do a lot of productions, and I make sure that every dancer gets his place. Every principal dancers will have a main part in the season. So when I create the season, I make sure that every dancer is busy. I do every season at Ballet Zürich a new full length. And I always choose themes or stories or ballet where I know I can put every dancer in there. And we put several casts in there so that everybody will be busy. And I also know if I invite different choreographers, they like maybe other dancers than I like, and they support them a little bit more. So I have to make sure that everybody is busy. Everybody has a responsibility and not just corps de ballet, because the moment the artists have responsibility, they're happy, they have something to work on, then there is no frustration. The frustration comes if you don't give them responsibility and they just have to follow a leader who says do this and it's done. They have to feel the moment of creation and then normally they are happy.
Why for your very first creation in Zurich you choose Romeo and Juliet and Prokofiev? Just coincidence, maybe?
No. Romeo and Juliet was the very first ballet music I heard when I was a young boy. I remember exactly, I think I was 15 years old, and my mom brought me this, it was the LP still, you know, you had to put them on in the back. And when I heard for the first time the Dances of the Knights, the famous dance in the first act, I was just blown away. It's until today, it means a lot to me. The second thing is, it was the first ballet I've ever seen, was Romeo and Juliet. We had no TV at home. My mom brought me to the neighbors and we watched the version of John Cranko with Marcia Haday and Richard Cragen, doing Romeo and Juliet. And I was, again, blown away completely. And when I entered after a long time Stuttgart Ballet as a dancer, the first production I danced on stage was Romeo and Juliet. So somehow this piece became like a key piece in my life. And I also believe that the music from Prokofiev is one of the best ballet scores ever written. So for me, it was out of the question. When I start a new company, the first piece must be Romeo and Juliet.
When you do such a piece like Romeo and Juliet and yourself saw Kranko ballet and you are from Stuttgart and Kranko version is so sort of famous, of course. Is it imprinted in your mind? It's hard to get rid of it when you do your own creation, or you just move forward without looking back?
It's very hard to get rid of it, but I see it as a positive thing. My time at Stuttgart Ballet, I learned a lot from the Kranko ballets. He was the first one who invented the story ballet more into characters, more into acting. It was very touching and very emotional, like Onegin and Romeo and Juliet. Beautiful, beautiful ballets. So I was lucky that I knew this ballets inside out, and I took this as a base to try to move forward and try to find different vocabulary and different ideas to continue the same idea. Because John Kranko, even though I never met him, and Stuttgart Ballet is my school, that's where I've been growing up. And I cannot ignore that. It's part of me. And I'm sure that in a lot of my works, you can see this, you can sense this, that this is my teacher. But I think this is okay. You need to have a teacher.
One of your recent creations, I understood, was Sleeping Beauty. Why you decided to go back to Sleeping Beauty, and what can you tell about the score of Tchaikovsky?
My first meeting with Tchaikovsky was the Nutcracker and Mouse King, where we tried to find a new version in order to go back to the original libretto from E.T.A. Hoffmann, which has been in the new versions of Nutcracker completely denied. It's actually a very dark and strange children's story. Mostly Nutcracker productions are very sweet, very Christmassy,
Our
very
understanding
entertaining.
is that it's even done after Dumas rewriting of original story.
It has a certain lightness and a sweetness, but the fantastic moment, the dark moment, it got a little bit lost. However, I enjoyed the work on the music of Tchaikovsky.
Music is tragic in Nutcracker.
The music in Nutcracker is actually completely different than in Sleeping Beauty. In Nutcracker, he used a lot of songs, Russian songs, melodies, and parts of it. He was actually not really interested in composing Nutcracker because he composed Yolanda, the opera, which has been both premiered at the same evening. It was, I think, like a 5 hours evening. Starting with the opera, going into a ballet, and both productions actually have nothing really in common. Sleeping Beauty is completely different. In Sleeping Beauty, he created music which is describing the characters. You really have the theme of Carabosse, you have the theme of Aurora, you have beautiful theme of the Lilac Fairy. So it's more like a leitmotif technique. You can hear in the music the story. That's not happening in Nutcracker. This is really Sleeping Beauty. And I believe it's next to Romeo and Juliet from Prokofiev, one of the strongest ballet music existing. And it was other people who kind of encouraged me and said, like, why don't you do Sleeping Beauty? Why don't you do Sleeping Beauty? So I gave in, and we found a way of creating it quite contemporary with a lot of irony, and changed the story a little bit to make it maybe more contemporary, more approachable from our time. But unfortunately, we could only perform it 2 times because then the pandemic arrived and we had to stop performances. But those 2 times were a big, big hit. It was a big success. The show was sold out in 1 day. And I hope that soon we can perform it again.
I hope to see it once it's back on stage. But the score was written under the very precise plan of Petipa. Really very precise.
I know.
Incredibly precise.
Yeah.
Do you work with composers sometimes giving them your plan like this, so they write music just for what you want?
No. I worked with an electronic composer once to create electronic music scores. So I choreographed during the day, and during the night I was sitting with him on the computer working on the music. But so far I didn't have the chance, or maybe I'm not ready to step in a tight collaboration with a composer to compose an entire evening, even though that is a big dream of mine, to find the right person.
So usually you're taking music which already exists. And for example, for Anna Karenina, you took Rachmaninoff and Lutoslavsky, and now for Orlando, we have Elgar, Lera Auerbach, and we have Philip Glass. How you choose your music?
First, there's the creation of the libretto. So we know what scenes we have, and the team, the artistic team, decides what we actually would like to tell out of the literature preparing. In this case, it's the book from Virginia Woolf. Then the next step is to find the right music. And with the music, you find the mood, you find the tension of a production. And it takes almost 1 to 2 years. So I collect a lot of music, and then I start playing with the scenes. And normally I'm trying to stick to 1 or 2 composers, and the other composers only have little moments in there. Like in this case with Oрландо, it's of course Edward Elgar, the cello concerto, and it's Philip Glass, the violin concerto. And all the other music is kind of like little connecting pieces in between.
And then you work very often with Emma Wright. She's your collaborator, and I knew she did Anna Karenina costumes, and I think Romeo and Juliet, and now again. What is so special about her costumes that you like to work with her?
I met her, I think like 14, 15 years ago we started working together, so a very long time. And what I like about her work is that it's very, very far away from the normal ballet costumes. It's not the traditional ballet costumes. And in the beginning, it was not easy to find the right way to move in those costumes and for the dancers to feel freedom in there. And during the years, Emma became really a specialist to create costumes which don't look like ballet costumes, but dancers are able to move in them. And I find it very tempting what depths she also giving to those costumes. They're not just pretty. They always tell a story. They always become part of the set. They always create a scene as well. They are very well thought through. They are more than just ornament and like sweet or nice to look at or pretty. It's always more with her. She always looks for a drama, and she always tries to stay very close to the story we are working on. And it's just fun to create with her.
But for example, do you discuss colors with her? Like, I need Juliet to be here in red, or Anna Karenina, or in black?
Well, of course, she makes sketches for every costume, and I look at them and we discuss this. And then she's choosing fabrics, and she's coming to me and she's showing them, and she's choosing different colors for scenes, and we talk about this. Like here now in Oрландо, scene number 5, it's quite colorful one, so she decided should be all macaron colors. And it's actually funny, I was here in isolation because I had Corona, so I was in my hotel room, damned to be alone. And she sent me a big package of macarons. And she said, I have to choose the colors now for scene number 5. And she said, like, you taste and the macaron you like most, you tell me on the telephone the color, and this is going to be the first costume.
Oh, how sweet.
Yeah.
Or our queen, she's all in orange or sort of gold, right? It was also your choice or Emma's?
What queen?
In Oрландо. I think the Queen.
Oh, Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth.
The Queen Elizabeth in the beginning. I think the Queen Elizabeth she stayed very close to the portraits from this time. So she really tried to give an original costume, how she really looked like. So we looked at a lot of pictures, we looked at a lot of movies, and quite often Elizabeth had this really red hair wig with those pearls in there. And the big challenge was, of course, that our Queen Elizabeth is danced by a man, to give this big female costume and to make it look still strong, like a woman, so it doesn't become a little bit dodgy. And I'm really amazed about those 2 dancers, Artemi and Simeon, how serious and how beautiful they create this character. It's very, very touching. Yes, yeah.
I like it a lot. Yeah. Very often you stage the stories which are quite, I would say, even unknown to the contemporary spectators. Well, sometimes they know it through the operas, like Lulu or Wozzeck, and I also was wondering if it's rather Berg who inspired you because of his music and the operas, or you were taking it more from the playwriting. And another thing, or like Winterize, or like Sandman, how you choose these titles? Why certain novels or certain piece of literature attracts you?
I don't know why it attracts me. I think there's something either in the literature or in the piece of music which talks to me. I have the feeling there's a connecting. My feeling is like with Winterreise, those 24 songs, they mean something to me. I feel like I listen to it and I feel a connecting there. I feel inspired. Very simple. And this is also with Wojciech, for example, or Sandman. Those books inspire me. And then, of course, the second look is, does it make sense to create a ballet out of it? Will it have enough characters to please an entire company? Will it make a full evening? Will it entertain the audience? Will it be a production which really has enough substitute to really bring it out? This is the second question. But in the beginning, it's just the fascination of something, the inspiration. There's something I like, and then something can grow out of it.
So you don't care if audience know about Sandman or Girl with the Matchbox, or they will just discover it through your ballets?
I always like to go to the theater and see something I don't know, and I get to know it. I find it exciting. And for me, it's the biggest success when the audience afterwards goes like, oh, I didn't know this story, or I didn't know this music, and I want to know more about it. I think that is very, very important.
You also did some opera productions already. Are you fascinated by this part of your job? Do you like to do operas? And what is your probably next creation?
I like creating operas. It's actually not so much different than ballet, because the words which are sung, they're also kind of abstract, like the language from the dancers. The ballet language is abstract. It's not, yeah. So the only difference is that when you create a ballet, you have to create the steps, you have to create the text. With the opera, the text is already there. The singers are coming to the rehearsal and they know exactly the text, and you only have to tell them how to do it and how you want to put it on stage. With the ballet, you have to create the choreography, the text first, and then much later you tell them how to do it. It's different work with opera singers, but it's some operas. When in Berlin, I could do the Flying Dutchman or La Damnation de Faust. These are beautiful works of music. It's very imposant with a huge choir. Or we did like co-productions in Ballet Zürich, Orphée and Requiem also from Verdi, where we had 120 people on stage. This is just exciting, especially when ballet dancers and singers meet on stage. It's always a beautiful, beautiful atmosphere.
When you have something like Fliegende Holländer, you just stage the story, or you're trying to see for some inner, very important meaning, which doesn't belong to the certain costumes or certain situation, but which is more deep than that and still relevant to us?
I think if you only stage the story, then this could be a little bit, why? I think it always needs a certain perspective. Because Flying Dutchman, for example, it has so many ideas in there, so many themes in there. I think you have to choose something you really like, and you have to make it big, and you have to make it understandable. You need to have a certain approach, because those operas get staged constantly in the world, everywhere. And if everyone would just do the story, it would be really boring, because then every production in the end would actually look the same. So I think it's interesting that the director comes with a certain idea and with a certain perspective on the work, because in one city you have it done by a choreographer, for example, Flying Dutchman. In another city you have it done by a very famous opera director, and both productions look completely different, have a completely different sense, but it's still the same score and it's still the same music from Wagner. And that is the beauty of this art form, that you can find different ways of putting it on stage.
And for yourself, the Fliegende Holländer was a story about somebody who is very lonely and travels all his life and never have a peace, or about this love of woman who waits you no matter what somewhere?
For me, it was more, the interesting character was Senta, the one who is madly in love with a ghost, with something which is not existing. And I was trying to tell it through Eric, because Eric is the boyfriend of Senta, and Eric doesn't understand what is going on there. Why is she crazy about a ghost? So Eric actually is a very small part, but he has the outside perspective. So we kind of gave the audience the opportunity to look at the story through Eric's eyes, to really understand the oddness of the Senta character, who commits suicide in the end because she wants to free and wants to be together with a ghost. It's rather spooky, exactly.
And about Orlando, coming back to Orlando, the novel is quite strange, because this Orlando character who lives through the centuries is always described more or less from outside. At least I don't come to understand his inner self. like beautiful man and takes a woman, takes easy whatever happens to him and goes through this time sort of easily. What's the story about for you, Orlando, which we will also see in Большого?
It's an invented biography, which already I find fascinating, that a writer decided I create a character which is non-existing and I write a biography about this character. And this biography is not only one life, it's 400 years of life in different centuries. And it's the thoughts Orlando has which are interesting. The thoughts about time. Who am I? What part am I in every century's society? That makes it exciting to me. And the reflection of who I am. And I just find it fascinating, but it's also a book, you can read it over and over and again and you always find new perspectives in there. To me, this book is a mystery. It's very difficult to come to a final essence, what it's actually about, because it's about lots of things. It's about poetry, because Orlando is a writer. It's about male and female and the value of it, because Orlando falls asleep twice for 7 days and suddenly wakes up as a woman, but it's still the same person. So it's telling us that actually it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, you still have same thoughts, and the decision what value male or female actually is done by the outside world, is done by the society outside. So there are lots of aspects in there about time. There's the time outside, but there's also the inner time. We all have different times in there. It's about fashion. What are we wearing every century? What does it say? What does other people read in me? What I'm wearing. I can wear a female costume, but I'm still a man. But people read this differently. So it has a lot to do with the perception. So this book is full of ideas and full of thoughts, and very deep thoughts. And the beauty of this book is it's very light. It's written for a friend. It's basically, it's a long love poem for a friend. It's very, very beautiful. And I think it's the biggest success of Virginia Woolf.
Very beautiful and very thoughtful and ironic also in a sense. And there is in the book a passage about fame and what is your fame actually when you're famous, like what does it mean in future time, etc. Do you care about being famous?
I'm not famous.
You think you're not famous?
No,
we think you are famous.
Yes. But there we go again. Who decides if someone is famous and what does it mean? I love my work. It's very precious to me. I love to be in the studio with dancers. I love my artistic team around me. I feel very honored if I can work on a place like the Bolshoi. This means a lot to me. When I received the invitation from Macha, I couldn't sleep all night. It's something very big for an artist. But in the end, it doesn't make a big difference if you do a work in a small company or in the big company. The work is exactly the same. To take it serious is exactly the same. Here it's more complex, it's more difficult because it's a huge theater. In a smaller theater it's maybe a little bit easier because the structures are more simple. But the actually work on the production is the same. And what does it mean to be famous? I mean, and does it make, when we are kids we always want to be famous maybe because we believe it makes you happy, because you get more attention? No. So I don't feel myself famous at all, no.
As time passes, do you also think about time, about also your time period on the earth, and also about what will be happening to your work in future?
Well, at the moment we have a very, very strange time. We have the time of the pandemic. And it's for the entire world an incredibly sad time. And this virus shows society what is functioning and what is not functioning. And we human beings have to protect ourselves now, and we have to protect each other, which is the most important thing at the moment. In Russia, it's a different situation at the moment, but in Switzerland, where I live, we are in a very, very long lockdown. Mm-hmm. That means we cannot do anything. We cannot perform, we cannot rehearse, we cannot go into restaurants, we should stay at home. So suddenly there's a lot of time. And there's also a lot of time to think. Sometimes this is good. Sometimes it's difficult. It's for a lot of people a huge loss. Ballet dancers, for example, who just finished their education and need to perform now, need to go to audition, artists, actors, musicians, they're not allowed to do this. So at the moment, they have to wait. For a lot of people in the world now, the pandemic is asking a lot. So I think time is something very, very difficult at the moment. It's the time to reflect. So I do think a lot about time now. And I do also think that time will come to an end on a certain moment. I don't call myself old yet, but I'm also not the youngest anymore. And the situation we're in at the moment, you think about the value of life. Because suddenly everything in Zurich, my job, my passion has been taken away from me. I cannot create, we cannot perform. We are not allowed to do big parties at home where I can cook for friends. So everything which is precious to me has been taken away. And this time will not come back. It's passing with those limitations. So now is the time to reflect. And I guess the hardest to stay positive and in the hope that this will pass.
I think time is really very difficult for the whole world. On one hand, I was wondering why around the world there is no rebellion, let's say, to reopen the art. The people ask to reopen restaurants and big malls and shops, but not so much fighting to reopen the theaters. For me, it's not a very good sign of the society. For me, it's a great pity to see this movement.
The first discussions in Europe when the lockdown happened was the question, what is relevant? Only what is relevant is supposed to work and to stay open. Relevant are grocery stores, relevant are hospitals, nurses, doctors, transportation, so this opened up. And after a couple of months, people realized there's other things which are relevant. But this is not it's not the first thought. But a life without art, without music, created music, performing arts, museums, is a life without soul. And I believe that art is the biggest education for us human beings. Art is educating us after the school time, after studying. To go to the theater, to a concert, means to reflect about ourselves. It's enjoyment because we live through emotions, but it's also the time to reflect who we are, in what relationship are we staying to each other. And this is missing at the moment. And I think that makes a lot of people very lonely.
I agree with you. I know that John Neumeier, for whom this time also was very tough, he melted it in his own creative experience and he staged this ballet.
Ghostlight.
Ghostlight, something like this. Are you thinking also to stage something about this time? Or do we see already this time somehow, maybe even unwillingly, reflected even in Oрландо, who is so lonely?
Probably.
Sometimes.
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky in this pandemic because I was able to choreograph 2 full-length productions. I was able to do Sleeping Beauty in Zurich, and after the second show it was over, but I could finish the work here. Now in the middle of the pandemic, where everything in Europe was closed, I'm able, by the immense support from the Bolshoi, where I'm so thankful, to do a creation here. I can do my work here, which is just beautiful. And I'm pretty sure now, when slowly the production is coming together, this production has a very melancholic tone. It has a very melancholic sound. And I don't think this is only because of the book. I think this has to do something with the time and how myself and my artistic team is sensing the time now. It's not a happy time. It's not a quick time. It's not an exciting time. I think it's a very calm time. So I believe there could be something in this ballet which is reflecting this, yes.
Of course, when you work with your own company, you know every dancer so well from all sides. But here you come to the new company and you don't know our people. How you made your choice for the leading characters?
I did follow the dancers, the leading dancers from the Bolshoi from a distance. So I was looking on YouTube, and the leading dancers of the Bolshoi are in social networks very active. You can see a lot of their work there. They're very present. So I could get a good idea about it. But to actually get to know the dancers is very, very difficult in this place. There's lots of classes in the morning and everybody's doing class somewhere else. It's very difficult to follow them and to get to know them. So I have the feeling now, slowly coming to an end with the premiere happening, is now I have an idea what the Bolshoi actually is, how the Bolshoi is actually functioning. I wish I could start now the creation again. I think I would take maybe some other decisions.
But maybe some other ballet. I see that very often your ballets, they are shown in different places. For example, I think Anna Karenina, so many theaters performed it. Is it okay for you that it's performed everywhere? You don't want to have it just for this company? I would like to have Oрландо just for Bolshoi, for example.
Well, Oрландо is just for the Bolshoi at the moment. And also the creations I do, they're normally connected to the company for a certain amount of years. If I give a ballet production to another company, I choose this company very carefully. And I always spend a minimum of 2 or 3 weeks there working with the artists in the end. I think it's nice to have an artistic exchange, and it's also very interesting. If Anna Karenina has performed here in the Stanislavski and at the same time in Seoul with the Korean National Ballet, they suddenly become two different ballets. And for me, it's always interesting to see my work created by other performers, because my art only lives through other artists, and they are happy to perform it. I think it's exciting. And there are some works I keep, of course, for Ballet Zürich, because we want to have something which nobody else has in the world. But I think it's also nice to share, because the ballet community in the world is a small community.
With your contract in frame of Zurich Ballet, it's a sign that every year you do one ballet or not? You are free?
In my contract it says that I have to do every season one ballet. It can be a solo of 1 minute, or it can be a full-length production.
Good, that's time, it's not limited. My couple last questions. I noticed that dancers at the end of Oрландо, they're writing something on the blackboards.
Yeah.
I was trying to understand what they're writing. I'm sure you didn't tell them what to write exactly, but you gave them some hint what about they should write. What do they write about? If it's not such a big secret.
It's no secret. The ballet is about time, and it's about poetry, and it's about thoughts about time. And we hear this also in the spoken text of the ballet, and it's reflected by the different centuries we see in the costumes and the dancers are performing in. So in the end, when we arrive in the modern times, I ask the dancers to go to the wall and write their own opinion about time, how they feel time, or what time does mean to them. And that can be something very simple, it can be something very philosophical, and I also gave them the opportunity, after they were writing it on the wall, that they can erase it with their hands, so nobody can see it, it stays a secret. But I want that the artists on stage give a thought out there about time which goes beyond the choreography, beyond the steps. So in the end, when Orlando's alone on stage, you see on the wall, which are staying the entire production there, something changed, something moved, somebody left something. There's a footprint, time leaves footprints, and I wanted the dancers to do this. And most of it I cannot understand because it's in Russian, but I always see a lot of technicians and people going around taking photographs of it, so I believe there's maybe some nice quotes there.
For me, this is a very touching moment, and watching it yesterday, I thought that actually the performance we're watching, of course it's a sort of dull idea and very well known, but the performance we're watching happens here. Because of course at that moment so many reflections comes into my own mind that what you're showing me on stage, basically for me just like hints to provoke my own thoughts to fly in certain direction, and I think you did it really very beautiful in Oрландо.
Thank you.
As we spoke so much about self-reflection and who you are, as a last question, how would you describe yourself, who you are, Christian Spuck?
I don't know.
Still? Even in your mid-age time?
If I would know who I am, I don't think I would be an artist. We are all in a constant dialogue with ourselves to find out, who am I? And I think we all have difficulties to answer. We know how we would like to be. We know how would we like to be seen by other people. but it's very difficult for us to see ourselves, to get to know who we actually are. And this difficulty of who we would like to be, who we see ourselves, but who we actually are, mostly is not matching. And I think this is the moment where art is coming. And this is the moment where people come into communication. This is the people who come close to each other. If I would knew who I am, I would be in complete peace and my life would be incredibly boring. I think it's exciting not to know who you are.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you to be the guest here. Thank you.